and welcome back to the Pregnancy and Postnatal Entrepreneurs Collective podcast. I'm your host, Niamh Cassidy, and today I am joined by Patricia Grenseman, who became a certified postpartum doula and a sleep consultant because of her experience as a new parent, and I know lots of you will resonate with that. But then she was finding that she was having more people starting to ask her for help with things like ChatGPT, social media, and their websites than their babies. So she shifted to online business support for birth workers, especially for people who want to run their business in a calm, low lift sort of way. So Patricia, thank you very much for joining us today. So maybe tell us a little bit more about how all that came about.
Sure. Yeah. So I had a pretty rough first year of parenthood. And I thought, well, one way that I can be useful to other new parents is by becoming a birth doula first. We were living in Japan. I had my first baby in Japan. We were out there for 3 years, and we went there when I was already 6 months pregnant. And so we were living on an American Navy base. And so there's it's a tight-knit community. And people were asking, other new parents were asking for help with things like meals or pack and plays or baby carriers. And I would go to these people's houses, other Americans, and they would open the door and be like, I'm sorry about my hair. I'm still in my pajamas. And I thought there's got to be a way to support these parents who are, far away from home, far from their support networks. If I become a doula, they won't feel like they need to apologize constantly. Like, please come in. I'm sorry about the laundry on my sofa. And I can do something meaningful for them. And so then I found out there was an information session on the military base to learn about how to become a doula. And that's when I learned there are such things as postpartum doulas. And it turns out that's what I really wanted to do, was to support families after they have a baby in the weeks and months after. And so I became a certified postpartum doula, and I later added sleep consulting the year after the pandemic. But I took all my work online the year before the pandemic because I had a second baby. And I thought, if I can, there are lots of different kinds of coaches out there who are supporting people online in the online business with online coaching hours, with resources. And I thought maybe this could work for parents. And then everything shut down the year after that. And I had a little baby. And so it was it was a real learning experience, figuring out, how do you support people without being in the room with them? How can you be present and available and make your work accessible in video conversations or like chat messages, voice messages and texts and stuff. And I really enjoyed the online business aspect of that work, maybe even more than hanging out with parents. And it was kind of a toss-up. But then when I started learning how to use ChatGPT first, that was when everything kind of shifted. And I found myself more often in birth worker groups giving advice to fellow birth workers about how to show up better online, what to do for social media posts, how to get your first couple of clients, and how to use ChatGPT as like in your work. And then, yeah, like you said, last year was the first year that more people asked me for help with their websites and their marketing than parents who hired me to work with their babies. And so I thought, well, I like this too. And so I've done a formal pivot, and now that's what I do. I help other birth workers with their marketing. Yeah.
And, I can resonate with every bit of that, because when I built my business in lactation and antenatal work, then I was finding that a lot of my colleagues and my peers and my friends were asking me, how did you do it? How are you getting the clients? How is that working for you? What have you implemented? And I was spending so much time supporting people with that I moved into the business coaching as well. Now I still do the classes and my lactation work as well. But I could definitely understand how both are appealing. And I think it's the helping people, it's the support, it's being with other women, it's all of that.
Yeah, for sure. And it's kind of the same work. Like, you're doing confidence boosting, you're looking for systems solutions to complicated, figuring out how to meet people where they are and provide them like the next step until they're strong enough to go do it on their own.
Yeah. And I know one of the biggest blocks that I find with clients, and I think you mentioned it to me as well, is around the idea of marketing and not wanting to market, but wanting to market ourselves because we know we have to run a business. And what do you find that people kind of need the most support with around that? Or why is it that people struggle with that so much?
Good question. I think that one of the hardest conflicts that we feel inside ourselves is that when we do this work with parents, we value the intimacy and the authenticity. It feels very grassroots. But then when it's time to market our business, especially online, like on social media or working on our website, it feels performative. Like we feel like we have to show up a certain way and be more polished, be very fluent, be a little more hypey than we would show up in our birth work. And I think that this is something we don't realize is the thing that's holding us back, that there's this gap between who we are with clients and who we think we need to show up and be in our marketing. So I think recognizing that and continuing to practice stepping into like the professional version of our work is the way to approach that, because we often start our work as birth workers feeling very like relational, like this is a nurturing kind of space. But the more time you spend here, the more you want to become like a professional version of you. Like this is a business. This is a legitimate moneymaker for my family. It has structure. There are boundaries. And it's okay to professionalize it instead of constantly feeling like, oh, it's just a little side gig. I'm helping people. But the more you practice doing marketing in public, like on social media, the more I think you step into the identity of being a person who has a business.
Definitely. And I think, everything you've said, we've all struggled with. It's that wanting to do the work because we love being able to support people. We love being with women. We understand the value that work provides. And then moving into space where it's, well, I want this to be my career or my profession or my business. And that means certain things have to happen. That there has to be regular clientele. We need systems and structures to support us around that. We need boundaries. So it can definitely be a bit of a journey for people.
Indeed. Yeah. Finding that structure and learning from other birth workers was huge for me. Feeling like, this is a thing that I do sometimes when I'm not with my kids, to instead treating it like a proper business, getting licensed and filing taxes and all of that stuff. It's a different version of my work that I lean into more and more every time I do a little bit of marketing. Like I show up in a more professional way.
Yeah, that's something that I'd often talk about with clients. And because it was a journey I went through myself, it was deciding that I was running a business and that this was my job, so being able to say even things like, no, sorry, I'm at work that day or at that time, so I can't do whatever favor somebody is asking me to do, and kind of owning that identity as a professional, as a business owner, whatever language we kind of want to put on it. And when people get to that point, they do kind of settle into things a little bit more, I think, but still often it can feel like there's so much to do and we have to do everything or else it's never going to work.
Yeah. With that comes a lot of pressure, right? If you're a real business owner, you'll show up in this way. Well, I think that there are those are expectations for different kinds of businesses that don't necessarily apply to the birth worker world. What do you think?
Yeah, I agree. And I think, that it's important that if we want to do this as our job, as our profession, that we build it around how we want to do it. Yes, there are actions we need to take to ensure that we run a business that takes in an income. There are things that need to get done. There's stuff that needs to happen. But the timeline of those things or how we implement them, it's okay to make that work for us, to make it work around our families or around the hours that we want to work. And sometimes that means accepting that sometimes things take longer because I only want to work this amount, or I only have this amount of resources, or I'm only willing to put in this amount of resources. But it is important that we do have an idea of what we want from our life, which includes our business.
Yeah, for sure. And that clarity can come from experimenting with different levels, right? I really wanted to be able to do the online business thing. My last few postpartum clients were a 1 hour drive to the north and a 1 hour drive to the south. And I thought, I can't do that with two babies in the house. And so for me, one of the things that I have really had to lean into is online marketing. So I do emailing and I have a newsletter very regularly. I post on social media, a little bit less now on Instagram, because I find the pressure to perform a certain way, to show up in a certain way there, keeps me thinking very small. It keeps me thinking like in a very narrow channel. And so as I work my way through that, I think Instagram will open up a little bit more again. You know, I love connecting like this with fellow professionals. I do a lot less of the in-person marketing work. But if you are a birth worker who is not really into the online space, you can do less online, but know that that time that you're not spending on online marketing should be invested in offline marketing, like running doula meetups or, bringing coffee to providers' offices or hosting doula drop-ins for new parents so that parents can come and explore your services in person. But the time that you're not with clients, you have to be thinking about which of these marketing options am I going to focus on, because marketing is not only showing up on social media.
Absolutely. And I think sometimes people forget that it's not just social media and that you can pick the channels that work best for you. I don't think we're at the point in birth work unless you already have a very significant previous client base that is doing, just the referral for you, where you can completely opt out of social media. I think people expect you to have some sort of presence, parents at this stage, but it doesn't have to be people's main tool of work.
Yeah, for sure. And it's taken me a long time to accept that I am getting a lot more inquiries for my work from posts that I make in Facebook groups than what I'm posting on Instagram. And, there are many different tactics or tools you can use to market your business. It's just a matter of experimenting and figuring out where you feel the most comfortable, or what the lowest barrier to entry is for you to show up consistently and be there. Most of the Facebook groups that I'm in allow, a certain period where you can self-promote. And so I'm working with two clients right now who do not follow me on Instagram and are not on my email list, but they saw my Facebook group posts. But doing that marketing work looks totally different in terms of an energy and time commitment than preparing social content, which is also useful. Like you said, it's expected that you have a social presence, but if it doesn't feel practical for you to be generating content for social media because you feel you have to show up in a certain way or a certain frequency, or because you think that the engagement that you're getting proves that it's not working, like the engagement that you're not getting proves it's not worth the effort, then you need to remember that families are still going to go to social media to sort of verify or validate. They're going to check your vibes on Instagram, right? So having some content there, even if it's once a week, even if it's like the words are pulled straight from your website. I mean, you have a website, right? Then it's repetitive, but that's good. That's reassuring. It reinforces the message. And it's so easy and calm because you're not going there in order to immediately connect, to get likes, to get DMs. You're just going there so that when a family is told, hey, you should hire for your baby, and they're like, oh, here's her Instagram, let me send you her Instagram so you can DM her. Those families will see all of the calm posts where you have explained what you do, what your services are, what your deep values are, without any of the pressure to perform or make it happen. They'll still reach out to you. And so I think a website is core, very important. And social media is important too, because social media is your vibe. Your website sort of legitimates the work that you're doing, your entity as a professional, right? But that doesn't mean that your social media has to be lively. It just has to reflect your values and be current.
And I think that's a really good point about reflecting your values. I think definitely a lot of us, when we start into the work, we're nervous. You know what I mean? You might be shy. I mean, I am a complete introvert. Not that anyone who has met me online would believe that. But, you know, like total hiding my face, never looking up from the ground, walking down the street sort of introvert. So coming online and then, you know, putting your face out there or putting even your words out there, often people aren't afraid of the judgment of the parents that they want to support, but they might be afraid of their peers and what they're going to think of them. So I definitely see that in a lot of my clients that are in their early stages of their business, that it's the peers that they're worried about.
Yeah, for sure. And it takes a certain ability to embrace the cringe, because you're doing a very brave thing, stepping into an identity that maybe you don't fully own yet. You haven't fully embraced it. And so knowing that people are watching and judging makes it difficult. But the reassuring thing is, if you're just starting out, a lot fewer people see your content than you think. So one of the things that I often encourage birth workers to do who are like either really shy about showing up or really resistant to being online is to embrace social media as your practice ground. Mm-hmm. Because, and I do this for myself too, I do not get a lot of engagement on my posts, and yet I'm still working, you know, like there are huge accounts on Instagram with hundreds of thousands of followers that get lots of engagement and views that haven't figured out how to share their work so that they can get paid.
Yeah.
But what you can do, even if hardly anybody sees your stuff, or if people are seeing your stuff and hardly anybody's engaging, don't count those metrics at all, but instead use that context, that platform, to practice saying the things that matter to your clients over and over again. And if your connections, your offline connections, are watching and cringing and skipping your content, even better, because then the algorithm will feed it to people who are connecting with it, you know, and not wasting those views on people who don't appreciate it. Absolutely. But using it as a practice ground, I think, is the way to go, because then when you have a real client in front of you, you know exactly what to say because you've said it 100 times.
Yeah. And it does. And it's like everything. The more you do it, the more confidence you get with it. You know, everything requires practice. So like I would have said in the past, and I have a lot of clients that would say, you know what I mean? I'm shy. I'm not confident like that. And it's like, most people aren't born with confidence to do these type of things. It's practice. So it's just the more you do it, the easier it gets.
Yeah. When we went to Japan, I've always been on Facebook. I made a Facebook group just for our like family and close connections to put baby pictures into, right? Travel pictures and stuff. Because I didn't want to put that on like big Facebook. I wanted it to be a private huddle. And then when I started a business, I was like, holy cow, am I going to have to go on Instagram? I had never been on Instagram before. And so as a baby doula, it took me a long time to figure out how I was going to say what I needed to say. And like, how do you say it so that you don't sound like, you know, you're like pitching your thing on a resale page? Because I have a professional version of myself that I'm sort of aspiring to be, you know? And so for me, that meant one of the first big investments that I made as a business owner was a lifetime subscription to the Styled Stock Society, which is run by Elle Druin, who started as a photographer doing stock photography, mostly for, I guess, like female business owners, right? And she also had templates, graphic templates for social media, which was a huge help for me because I have a degree in linguistics to teach English as a second language. I don't really feel that I'm much of a graphic designer. I don't do marketing or business or anything like that. But having that resource available to me, like as a starting point, that graphic was massive in making me feel like I do know how to make this work like a business. At the Styled Stock, in that specific product, there were also caption templates. And so for like a full year and a half, I followed all of her caption templates to help me figure out, how do you talk like a marketer? How do I talk about my business so that I'm like strategically hitting all the notes and making
Mm-hmm.
sure that people are hearing what they need to hear in order to decide whether to work with me. And then later, when I started Amy, my
Mm-hmm.
online, my AI marketing engine, I switched from Styled Stock Society, which feels very classy and modern, timeless. I switched over to Your Template Club, which I think you also are a big
I
fan
do,
of,
yeah.
because those templates are more current, a little more wry. They're she's got a great sense of humor. The vibe's a lot more lighthearted. And that helped me sort of get over the hump of like, how do I say what I need to say and show up as a business with an identity and an opinion
Mm-hmm.
and, a little bit of flavor when I was feeling really bogged down on the business side. And that support, that little bit of that tool that helped me to post, helped me keep it going. And in doing it over and over again, I learned how to sound like a marketer and not feel so cringy about it. And it's the
How
same now
to,
with AI.
I know this is what you mean, how to sound like yourself, but in a way that markets the work that you're doing so that people can understand the work, first of all, because sometimes people don't understand the work that we do or how it could be helpful, or what they can get from it at the end. So being able to show people how that works and how helpful that can be. And we do need to learn, like it is a skill, like the templates help. They give you a base point to start with. And then the more you work with either, templates or captions or people who understand copywriting or marketing, the more you learn from them and the more you'll be able to self. But I know you have good with AI as well. So how have you brought that into your own business and how do you support other people to use it in theirs?
Yeah, so in 2023, I was trying to, let's see, what did I do? I had a small offer for new parents to prepare for postpartum, and I was trying to figure out how do I sell this on a larger scale. And I was learning from somebody who was using a lot of ChatGPT in their work. And she's a really strategic thinker. And I was like, wow, I've never thought about marketing that way before.
Mm-hmm.
And then through her, I heard about someone who I found ChatGPT really cumbersome to use at first. It felt like more work than it was worth because you have to prepare chat for every chat. Who are you? Who's this message for? What are the goals for this message? What's the tone and I was like, I can do this myself faster, until I heard somebody explain that they had prepared like a set of instructions for chat so that it would work like a virtual assistant for them. And I was like, well, that's the ticket that will help me use this tool better. And so I made my first custom GPT, and having that GPT like embedded in my doula work for a little while was really, really valuable because it meant that suddenly I wasn't working alone anymore. And it is OpenAI's policy that we do not anthropomorphize the service. Like we shouldn't be making it more human. And so they're like, it's not a human, it's a robot, but it talks just like a human. And when you're sitting by yourself, working at your computer all day, having a human like or some idea person to bounce ideas off of is hugely helpful. And so I feel like I learned so much that year about sort of the messaging for my offer, how to have like an arc, like a sales arc. I've never really considered that before. And it just really accelerated my learning for marketing. And so then when people were like, hey, Patricia, how are you using AI or ChatGPT in your business so well? Can you teach us? That's when I realized I can, so I went to school for linguistics to teach English as a second language. I was a classroom teacher for several years. And now I help people learn how to speak another language. It's the
Mm-hmm.
marketing language. How do you do sales and business and tell people about your work so that it sounds like the solution to the problem that they're having, right? And now I'm also teaching people how to teach AI to sound like you. So I'm still doing the same work. It's just in a different context. And so what I do for clients now is I have a small membership, the AI marketing engine, Amy, where I send 3 social media prompts in an email every Monday morning for you to adapt to your own business. So you put the prompt in. I use mostly Claude now, and it'll be something like, I think last week it was about, so summer's here. What's one thing you find parents always need to remember when the weather gets hot? And so Claude helps quiz you or interview you about that, and then prepares a first draft for a caption for that topic, which you can personalize and then put on Instagram or Facebook or whatever. And so every Monday morning, you get these prompts that are like caption templates that you can collaborate with an AI tool with, so that you have a piece of content that works strategically to connect with parents who have questions that are facing these, like, of course, parents are worried about the heat, the summer heat. How do you stay cool with a newborn that only drinks milk and can't wear sunscreen? Like, talk to them about that. I also send a prompt for a long form piece of content, like if you need to write a resource or a long email or a blog post, and one prompt that's like a business admin thing. So this week, because, like here when we're recording, it's the first week in June and it started on a Monday. And so it's like, you need to reflect on the whole first half of the year. How are you different? How are you the same? Are you getting closer to your goals? And so when I lean on AI for these things, it's like everything in my work becomes more, gets more momentum. And so I feel like I spend a lot less time stuck and feeling like nothing's working because I have this collaborator to help keep me moving.
I think that's probably a way that people haven't always thought about how to use their AI. We talk often about using it as a tool, and some people just outsourcing everything to it, which has its own complications. But the idea of using it as a collaborator, I think it resonates a little bit better in that it feels more beneficial if we're going to collaborate with it. So we're not asking, because people are stressed about asking the thing to do the thing, and then it doesn't sound like me, or, everyone's just putting out the same stuff. You can tell it a mile away, you know what I mean, by the language and that sort of thing. So this idea of the collaboration in it, it sounds like it would bring out a lot better outcomes or outputs from it.
Yeah, for sure. Because it's a very human thing to treat the AI tool as if it's like a junior writer or like an intern or whatever, like, do this task for me. And when it doesn't do a good job, to write it off and say, well, this is not the tool for me, or like, this didn't turn out the way that I wanted, to rewrite it or try it again. But when you work with it in a more collaborative way, it helps you to think about how to prompt better as well, because you can start to recognize the gaps in the questions that you're asking and why it's not generating the feedback that you want. And so I've spent a lot of time trying to learn from folks who are really good at, I guess, asking the right questions or writing the strongest prompts to get the most meaningful feedback back from the AI tool. And so even though what I'm sending my Amy members every Monday is a prompt for social media, like captions, I think one of the hidden benefits is that they also get a little marketing lesson, because, like this week you need to talk about informative post about how to help families when the weather gets hot, a promotional post about like the cheapest, most affordable, accessible offer that you have for parents, and one values prompt about why you believe, lactation support prenatally is so important for families. But they're also getting a lesson on how do you write a good prompt to get meaningful feedback back from Chat or Claude or Gemini or whatever. And being able to do all those three things makes me especially proud.
Absolutely. I think it's so helpful as well. And I know because you do specialize in working with other birth workers like me, in that the prompts that you're given are meaningful for the work that we do, which is so important. Because I've joined other memberships and different things like that where you get prompts or stuff, and just, a lot of it, I can't make it fit what I want, what I wanted to say. You know what I mean? It's just too generic. It's too generic is probably the right word. So I'd say it's so helpful for your clients and your members to be getting things that are very specific, but can be tailored to them.
Yeah. And I love when I ran a ChatGPT workshop, you would open ChatGPT and there's a prompt to prompt you to fill in the gap, right? Like, ask Chat to help you analyze a report. And it's like, I have never had to analyze a report in my entire career. So it's clear who the tool is made for, right? Like, the tool was designed for I don't know, like some corporate folks elsewhere doing work that's nothing like mine. And yet I have found that it can be so useful to draft marketing assets or to consider, like to do a little back and forth about which strategy should I use to promote this new thing that I want to do. I have an AI tool that I'm thinking about building, but is this the right time? Because I said at the beginning of the month that I wanted to finish this blog arc of like 12 blog posts that I've got planned. So maybe I should wait on that. And like having someone to talk that through and reinforce for me what I've already decided. Nobody else is using, like the people who made Claude didn't set it up for that. They set it up for business use cases, like for deep work in business. But being able to use it as a virtual assistant, as a second outside brain, I think that's what's actually useful for people like us.
Yeah, I think that's definitely makes a lot more sense. I was laughing in my head when you were saying about kind of bouncing the ideas back off, because what I was thinking was when I was using ChatGPT, that I found it just kept telling me what it thought I wanted to hear, but it wasn't all, I was actually looking for genuine opinions sometimes, but I don't know whether AI can give you a genuine opinion. I do find Claude is a little bit better for me in that it doesn't jump to people pleasing as much.
Yeah, I find chat was getting awfully long-winded late last year. I find that Claude is a lot more down to business and often tells me to go do the work. I'll be here if you need me, and then it like closes the conversation. So I appreciate that. It's a different personality. It's a different vibe over there.
It definitely is. So Patricia, is there anything else that you feel would be helpful to share with us right now that we didn't get to cover already?
Yeah, I think for those of your listeners who are struggling with marketing, which is, like the number one thing that I did struggle with as a birth worker as well, I think it's okay to do less, first of all, to use the tools. And so for me, that would look like leaning on AI to generate the marketing assets, even though, one of the pushbacks is that it feels like cheating or like it's the easy way out. You should be doing the work. But we hear that in parenting groups too, right? When people say having an epidural is cheating or having an elective C-section is the easy way out. But I think we have so many tools at our disposal to use for marketing. If you can't afford a social media marketer, like a director or a virtual assistant, you don't have the time to go back to school and get a marketing degree, use the templates, use the caption prompts, use AI tools. Because if you can step into the most like ambitious professional version of you, that means more families can benefit from the hard work and the wisdom that you have to share with them, which is the work that we want to do in the world. The good work that we want to do is to support the families.
Absolutely. And it gives you more time to do so. I don't know any lactation consultants doing home visits now that are still using paper maps. We use Google Maps, which is AI, to get us there. So while everything new can be a little bit scary, sometimes we just need to find the ways that feel good. For joining us on the podcast. If people want to find out more about the work that you do and how you can support them, where's the best place for them to go?
Well, my core is my website for sure, patriciagrenseman.com. I have a marketing tool for your listeners if they're interested. If they want calm, low lift visibility, grab my calm marketing system. And on Instagram, I'm still there. You can come and check out my vibes at ai.marketing.engine. AI marketing engine, and connect with me in the DMs there. I'm always hanging out.
Thank you so much. I'll put all of those links in the show notes as well. So thank you everyone for listening to this podcast today. If you have any thoughts, Patricia has just said to reach out to her for DM, and I'd love to hear your thoughts as well in how you have found the episode, what you were thinking about AI, how you were using it, and all of those kind of marketing niggles that get us all at times. So I am delighted to have had you all, and I will talk to you all again next week. Bye.